Hi, everyone. Welcome to Summer EBT 2024, Insight from States Implementing This Year, hosted by the Food Research and Action Center. I'm Steve Hayward, Communications Manager at FRAC. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few brief housekeeping items. We expect this webinar to run about 30 minutes. We're recording the presentation and will send the recording and slides in a follow-up email. Closed captioning is available. To turn captions on, select Show Captions. It's the CC button in the bottom taskbar and choose English as the spoken language. At the end of the presentation, there will be time for questions and answers. To ask a question at any time during the webinar, please use the Q&A tab in the bottom taskbar. With that, I'll pass it off to Kelsey Boone, Senior Child Nutrition Policy Analyst at FRAC.
Thanks, Steve. So just to get us started, just a little question to kind of get everyone engaged. If you could put in the chat function what you're hearing from your state about Summer EBT. Anytime throughout the presentation, we would love to hear what's going on in every state, and would really like that information. So if you have the ability to put in the chat where your state, what you're hearing from your state, that would be great. Next slide. So really briefly, today's agenda, we're going to start with an update on where Summer EBT is and some FRAC resources. And then we will turn it over to our wonderful advocates, Signe Anderson from Tennessee Justice Center, to give us some insights. And then I will be passing it off to Matt Steinstra from Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin. And then at the very end, we will be opening up for a Q&A. Just a note about the Q&A, some of these questions we may not have the answers to, and we're happy to turn some of them over to USDA FNS if we are not able to answer them. And we will try to get answers back in our follow-up email if that is necessary. So just a real quick caveat about that, and we'll go ahead and dive right in. Next slide. So the Summer EBT program, as many of you know, is a permanent and nationwide program that states have to opt into. It was created by the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023. So that was back in December of 2022. The first summer of the program is this coming summer, 2024. The program provides $40 per eligible child per month, and that will be adjusted for inflation in upcoming years. And that benefit is provided on an EBT card for groceries. Part of the Summer EBT program is that states must cover 50% of administrative funding. And it is this program we really see as a complement to the summer nutrition programs. So we really see this as a way to fill the gaps of the traditional summer nutrition programs and to reduce food insecurities for low-income households, particularly in rural areas or those with low access to summer meals. Every state must submit a notice of intent each year on whether or not they want to run the program or are intending to run the program. States that did not opt in this year can opt in next year. And that is our main focus for those states that were not able to opt in this year. And we will touch on that in this presentation. So next slide. So a big piece of this program was the interim final rule. That was due in December of 2023, based on the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And the interim final rule was released on December 29th of 2023, and it really mirrors guidance that was previously released by USDA. All of this information is available on USDA's website. FRAC will also be releasing some summaries of the interim final rule in the upcoming weeks. But I just wanted to kind of call out where some of the areas that USDA is seeking comment on within that final rule. So some of the plan of operation and management requirements and deadlines, some approaches to defining the age range age range for children who can be streamlined certified using state or ITO data, different pieces of application requirements, and best practices for collaboration across states and ITOs. There are a couple of other areas, those are listed on this slide, and again, will be included in our summary that we will be posting in the next few weeks. Additionally, FRAC will be creating sample comments for submission and a portal that will allow individuals to easily submit comments. And we will be notifying our listservs when those come up. So if you are not signed up for a FRAC, for information from FRAC, you can visit our website and we can get you signed up for that, so you will know when those comments are posted. Next slide. So where are we right now? Right now we are in between the January 1st deadline, which was the notice of intent deadline, where states had to submit to USDA that they intended to run the Summer EBT program in 2024. 35 states and all 5 territories, as well as 4 Indian tribal organizations, the Cherokee Nation, the Chickasaw Nation, the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, and the Osage Nation, all did submit their notice of intents, which is really exciting. We are super thrilled with the amount of states that have decided to opt in this year. And if your state is one that did not submit a notice of intent, don't worry, they can submit for in the next year. So they can run this program next year. And we at FRAC are very focused on especially those states that did opt not to submit their notice of intent and making sure that they participate next year. Next slide. So for those states that don't have a notice of intent, here are some things that you can be doing or you can do over the next year in order to try to ensure that your state runs the program in 2025. So coalition building is a wonderful way to garner support and raising public awareness through the media, through social media, through letters to the editor or opinion pieces. So these are just some areas that can help raise public awareness and building coalitions with other groups or other individuals that are really interested in, this program and in ensuring children have enough to eat over the summer can really help build your campaign. The next is to target friendly legislators to introduce legislation. So one way, if your state is unfriendly to this program, so your state agencies, your governor may not be on board, one way is to go through legislative action. So trying to push forward some sort of bill that can raise awareness as to what Summer EBT is and moving that direction. The final is trying to get your state to publicly commit to submitting in 2025. So we have some states that have come out and said either they plan on running next year or they're looking into running in 2025. And those kind of comments can really help to ensure that or to garner some leverage in order to push states forward for next year. Many states who have not chosen to participate this year have indicated that they're open to operating next year. And these are just a few of those states that have mentioned in news articles or to the media that they are looking into participating next year. Next slide. So if your state does have a notice of intent, the next deadline is February 15th. At that point, states, territories, and Indian tribal organizations have to submit a final plan for operation and management, otherwise known as a POM. After submission of that POM, states can begin drawing down benefit funds. Pieces of the POM include the administrative budget, written agreements detailing roles and responsibilities of each agency, plans for cooperation between the state and ITOs, participation estimates, enrollment processes, plans for program integrity, and plans for customer service and support. Just a reminder that the notice of intent that these states have submitted is non-binding. So continued advocacy in your state, even if you have a notice of intent submitted, is needed to ensure that a state follows through and submits a plan of operation and management, because they cannot run the program without that. Next slide. So here are just some resources that FRAC has up, as well as some of our upcoming resources. If you visit FRAC's website and click on Summer EBT under programs, all of these resources are available. We will also send out these slides, which have links in them. And we have a couple of upcoming webinars, upcoming resources that I've already mentioned. So the blog, the resource that summarizes the interim final rule provisions, as well as the model comments and the comment portal. So those are all upcoming. I think my next slide is for Signe to present, so I will pass it over to her.
Thanks, Kelsey. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting Tennessee to be here today. I would say, first of all, I mean, we were really excited back in, I think it was the end of 2022, when Congress passed the legislation to make summer EBT permanent. And ever since that point, we've been talking about what it would look like in Tennessee and making sure that everybody knows that summer EBT would be permanent, and kind of checking in with DHS, our Department of Human Services, and even our Department of Education about whether or not there was interest or conversations about participating. And just to give folks some background information, during the pandemic, we had put together a group of PEBT partners that we were checking in with monthly during the pandemic, that kind of stopped meeting towards the end of the PHE unwinding, but we've continued to stay in touch with those partners. And we also, throughout the pandemic, had a PEBT alert group where we were connecting with 5,000, up to 5,000 families had registered to participate in our PEBT alerts, where we were sharing information about PEBT. So between the end of the PHE and now, we've been talking about how summer EBT could potentially be a possibility. And again, checking in with DHS, our Department of Human Services, to figure out whether or not they were going to be participating. I think there were two factors that were kind of making Tennessee put on the brakes when it comes to making the decision. One of them was not having the USDA guidance. When we asked if they were going to do it, they said, well, we're waiting for the USDA guidance to come out. And then the other piece, I think the big piece that a lot of states are facing, especially those states that didn't participate, was having the 50% administrative costs. So those were kind of the two major factors that I think we weren't able to get a direct answer from Tennessee right away as to whether or not they were doing it. So, leading up to that, we were sharing a lot of information with partners and with the partner group that we'd established back during the pandemic. FRAC had some great data that they came out with in the fall about the return on investment. And so we shared those kind of in individual conversations with partners. We flagged it for our state agencies to ask about their thoughts on the return on investment. And would this help for us to participate? And still in December, we did not have a clear answer as to whether or not our departments would be participating. So we decided at that point we would really dig in, and we created an online campaign to get our network to send letters to our governor, to our commissioners at both the DHS and DOE, and really push to ask them to participate in summer EBT for 2024. in about a week's time, we had almost 500 people send letters to the governor and to the two commissioners. So that was great. And at the same time, we were organizing a letter with some of our key partners, and had about 20 to 30 partners sign on to this letter. We used a letter very similar to what the folks in Alabama used to share with their governor. So thank you, Alabama, for the copy of that. We changed it to be appropriate to Tennessee, but we had our food banks and United Ways and other schools and child advocates sign on to that letter. And so we sent that to the commissioners and the governor. And at the same time, we were working with other partners, like the Grocers Association also sent a letter to our governor, their separate letter as well. And I think all of that helped to hopefully push Tennessee to participate. And it was, I think maybe 4 or 5 days before the new year that I got an email and a text from DHS to say that they were going to be participating. So we just barely got in there, and we're really excited about it. I think the thing to keep in mind, as Kelsey mentioned, even though they've submitted their letter of intent, we want to make sure that they get to the finish line, and we're hopeful that they will. So we've been trying to share a lot of press about how exciting this is, and then also doing a lot to thank our governor and the commissioners for deciding to submit that letter of intent. And so I'm hoping that the encouragement and the and all of that will help to see the plan actually get to USDA by the 15th. So between now and then, in addition to the press and saying thank you to all those who decided to do summer EBT in Tennessee, we're also connecting with the state agencies to figure out what the plan is come February 15th and beyond. And the other thing that I would also note that we've heard from at least one of our state agencies is that this is particular to 2024. There's no guarantee right now that Tennessee is going to participate in 2025. So we will continue to do what we can to advocate and urge the state to participate in 2025 and beyond. So those are kind of the highlights that I have from Tennessee, and I'm happy to answer anything that's happening in the chat, but I'll stop because I know Matt has some things to share too.
Thanks so much, Signe. Next slide. And I will pass it over to Matt.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Steenstra. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Programs with Feeding America East of Wisconsin. And Wisconsin is, everyone in the state is excited that we are one of the states that submitted our letter to a letter of intent. A lot of the things that we did and have done are similar and mirror the actions and strategy of what Signe talked about of her work and their work in Tennessee. I guess like a different way that I can talk about it is one, just where we're at as a state. We've submitted the letter of intent, fully committed to being able to have a plan that we're confident in that gets submitted before that mid-February deadline. And a lot of the issues that folks are working through across the country are the same things in Wisconsin. It's budget, right? It's some of the requirements from FNS that they're trying to identify right now a way to go through. I think one of the great things and thinking about how are we working with state agencies on something like this is we don't have to build this from scratch. The communication, a lot of the workings, our state agency, Department of Health Services, has also worked with our Department of Public Instruction, the Education Department state agency, through PBT, Summer PEBT. And so a lot of those sort of communications and the workflows have been put into place already. So it's, from everything that we're hearing, it's going a lot smoother this time than it has in the past. But I think, when we're talking about how can advocates work with state agencies. I think like generally we talk about starting the relationship and strengthening the relationship. And even if you're in a state that doesn't have a real relationship with the administering agency, it really, for us and for everyone, just starts with an email, finding the staff person on a website that like is in charge of it, and sending an email and talking about like how what can we provide, what can they provide, what is relationship is two ways. So what are the things that we can do that's valuable to our state agency? And that's everything from providing stories of policy success or failure or gaps in the system. We connect our state agency with our network of partners to make sure that they can get targeted communications out to an audience that they might not normally be able to get out to. We look for opportunities to be able to elevate stories to the state agencies so they can see the impact of the work. So for when there's things like Summer EBT, where a ton of work was done, and it was administratively, like, it was not always the easiest to do, and to think about the applications and how does the implementation work. Sometimes the people that do a lot of this work, they don't see the thank you. So what we've done is provide a channel to make sure that we're uplifting and amplifying stories to not only just show where programs can be improved and where there's gaps in the system, but where things have really hit home and made a difference for families, so that we can have folks be committed to pushing through when they're trying to figure out how to provide that admin this time around and go through the regulations. I think the other thing that we do too is we establish roles and expertise and structure. So again, exactly the same as Signy. There was statewide and then individualized calls that were regular that went out during pandemic EBT. And so a lot of it is just getting the gang back together and establishing that structure again, and the cadence of those calls and communications can kind of align with the urgency of specific deadlines, as it gets closer to getting a plan implemented, or when we're talking about implementation, application, and what are things that we see, what are problems that we see, and how can we work with other state colleagues and national colleagues through FRAC to identify best practices, the way that things are being navigated across the country, and what are the ways that we can apply them here in Wisconsin. I think another thing that we do too, again, to just try and have, I know it's tough, but always thinking about like this is a relationship, which means it's two ways, is uplift and amplify. So we also amplify their messages. If we're putting something out publicly, we'll send a little note to check about language to make sure that we're aligned on the details about a specific program, about the way it's going to work, maybe when something's going to go out to the public. And we make sure that we're raising issues too. We're amplifying issues as well. Things that are going well, things that aren't going so well. But at the end of the day, we treat the relationship around Summer EBT with our state agencies the same way that we treat relationships with state agencies across all other federal and child nutrition programs, which is something where we reach out to this administering state agency. We identify ways that we can help support. We do our own analysis. This happens with DPI on everything from school meals to other programs related to child nutrition. It happens with DHS related to SNAP and other programs related to SNAP. And so it's really just an extension of this. So the goal is that when Summer EBT comes up and we're nervous about, gosh, it's December 20 something, and we haven't seen, and a list from FRAC comes out and we're not on it as far as submitting the letter of intent, that we can have a really swift communication with our state agency to just ensure that we're on track to be able to submit it. And I know Signy mentioned something about like how it was a similar type of situation and she received a text saying that we're good. And I think that's the same type of thing that we go for, is that if the state agency is feeling comfortable enough to be able to report back with that sort of information, it's incredibly helpful to us.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Matt. Thank you both so much for those amazing insights. Would love to turn to questions and answers now. If you have a question, you could put it in the Q&A chat box or the Q&A box. That would be the most helpful. There are just a few general questions that I want to address. So the first is, are states willing to share their individual plans that are due by February 15th? As far as we are aware at FRAC, most states have not submitted those plans yet, and most states are still working on those plans. The template for those plans has come out in the last 2 weeks, so we expect some plans to be in soon. And so if we are able to see those plans, that'll be up to USDA and to the individual state agencies. But if any state agencies are on the phone and would like to share those, I think it would be very helpful for other states to see examples of what other states are doing. So the next question is there any reason to think participation will become required in the coming years? It is in the statutory language that states must opt in. So it would take a change to the statute in order for states to be required to do so, I believe. So that is probably not a change that will happen, but we will just have to see how the next few years play out. The next question is, who is typically tasked with submitting the plan for operation and management? That will be your lead summer EBT agency. So whichever of your agencies has decided that they are leading this program, they are the ones that must submit the plan for operation and management. So Signe, I have a question, and that is, what advocacy strategies would you encourage individuals to engage in that may be from states that are unfriendly to summer EBT in order to turn that around?
Yeah, so I think anytime you're able to share stories is helpful. So we've had the opportunity just throughout the pandemic to connect with a lot of families, and whenever we can lift up and share exactly how summer EBT, how PEBT was helpful to them, I think that's really important. And then I think the other piece is, find the anti-hunger agency within your state and work with them, because they will often have letters that you can lift up to your people in power. We generally don't go through the legislation with this. I think it's more productive for us to work with the state agency and sometimes the governor with this particular work that we're doing around summer EBT. But I would say, lift up any stories. If you're a teacher or if you're, work closely with families, being able to talk about that, if you have a perspective, and then working with your state anti-hunger advocates.
Wonderful, thanks so much. Matt, what do you see as Wisconsin's biggest hurdle to operating the summer EBT program, and how would you, as an advocacy group, support the state to get over some of those hurdles?
Right now, it's still making sure that the budget is in place, and then making sure that our state agency is able to navigate the FNS requirements. As state advocates, the thing that I'm looking ahead to is actual application and implementation, and working alongside our Department of Health Services and Department of Public Instruction to make sure that the pool of eligible families is as large as possible, and that on the ground that the program works well. That's, I think, the number one thing that I'm looking at heading into the summer, making sure that everyone's aware of issuance dates, that the cards are that everything's appropriately loaded, making sure that people are aware of expungement A lot of the kind of intricacies of the program, that's kind of the lane that I think I'm going to be living in, is navigating those sorts of issues. And then again, identifying these problems, and if need be, like doing advocacy, administrative or grassroots, to be able to help make sure that our state agencies, make the right decision.
I just realized I was muted. Not a day on Zoom if you don't do that. Thank you both so much. There were a few other questions, but they were more general, so I answered them in the Q&A function. And the question about the link to the template, I am not 100% sure, but it should be posted on USDA's website in the next week or so. So we can actually send the template link around if it is up, and in our follow-up email. So we'll keep an eye out for that and try to put that in the follow-up. I realize that we are at time, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. FRAC is always here if you have questions. If you need some support in any way for advocacy, we are here to help. I really appreciate Signy and Matt joining us today. Thank you both so much. We look forward to having all of the states sign on in 2025, but right now we're just really excited for this summer. So thank you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Bye, everyone.